Good morning, good morning, everyone, and welcome once again to our weekly SonRise Project call, where we are here together in this safe space to share with one another and to find grace and compassion and love as we work to heal ourselves, our families, our children. And as I always start, I'll start with a serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Oh, and that means so much to me today. I'm super excited to have with us our very special guest for today. Her name is Ashleigh Guice. Is that correct? I didn't check
Yep.
earlier. Ashleigh Guice. And just for perspective, we do a survey during our weekly call. And during one of our surveys, several people asked about or desired to have a conversation about navigating romantic relationships, whether it's dating, marriage, or being fabulously single, whatever it may be. There was a request to have a speaker that really deals with relationships to share. And so that's why we have Ashleigh Guice here. Ashleigh Guice is an author, a blogger, a trained life coach with a master's of positive psychology. She created something called Single Woman Chronicles in 2015, so quite a while ago, to help other women feel empowered and supported while being single. She teaches self-worth and self-awareness, and her motto is being single is a beautiful choice rather than a miserable circumstance. With years of blogging and battling unhealthy relationships, she has turned her experience into encouragement, and she hopes to continue to inspire women to be their best selves, no matter what their relationship status may be. So, welcome, Ashleigh Guice. I'm so excited that you are here with us this morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here this morning.
I love your background. We were just talking about that. It's beautiful. And you're coming from Atlanta, Georgia, correct?
Definitely in Atlanta right now. Mhm.
Awesome. Well, let's start by having you share your journey with us. What caused you, what prompted you to become a relationship expert and life coach? What inspired you to get into this space?
What's so funny is I never wanted to be in this space. But
Okay.
they often say if you want to tell God your plan, make God laugh, tell him your plans, right? But basically, I was around, I think like 23 at the time, and I was always the single friend. Like I was the girl that didn't have a boyfriend in high school, college, like anything. And I always had people around me who were always in relationships, like, and they wanted to give me advice all the time. And I'm like, you can't give me advice because you're always in a relationship. So you don't understand my struggle. And so I felt like other women had that same mindset, but they didn't have a community. So I launched Single Woman Chronicles. So at first it was literally just me complaining
Oh,
about
that's
things.
funny.
Yeah, and just whatever. But once I started it and just really got into it, my life started lifing for me. So
Mhm.
just a little bit of background. I deal with daddy issues. I don't know who my father is. So that's like been a big thing for me. My mom growing up, she's a great mom, but she did have a bit of emotional unavailability just because she
Okay.
trying to, cope. So that put me in a position where I had strong, heavy abandonment issues. So my dating patterns were
Mm.
very unhealthy. So just going through that, I had to get to a space. Well, I got to a space where I was very low in self-esteem and very low in self-worth, where I hit my bottom, ended up in a very toxic relationship that like was like the worst. And so once I came out of that, I started to heal. So that's when I got my master's in positive psychology. I started to go to therapy. I started to recognize it, become very aware. And so that's when my brain kind of shifted. My brain went from complaining and all of this thing to, I went from this sad abandonment issue girl who was low in self-esteem and low in self-worth. Let me help someone else because I know I'm not alone. So that's how
Mhm.
I got to the space where I'm like, you
Mhm.
know what? Let me help women to overcome the obstacles that could be keeping them single. Because I think oftentimes we think it's a physical thing, or and it's most time not. Like most of the times it's an internal thing. It could be how we handle relationships, how we pace ourselves, how we see ourselves. So that's how I got here.
And when you talked about just now being in a toxic relationship and it took you a while to get out, what were can you share some of the signs of the toxic relationship and how did you get out of the relationship? For some people on the call might be going through something similar. So I'd love for you to share like what did that look like, the toxic relationship, and how did you break that? How did you get past it?
Gotcha. Yeah. So the relationship, I called it toxic because there was no safety there as far as like emotional safety. It wasn't a physically abusive relationship, but it was very emotionally and mentally abusive. So I'll give examples. He started an argument with me every single week on purpose, every week. And I'm a very chill person. I don't like arguing. And he would do things to, just cause me to argue with him every single week. And then he would become, so he could be my hero, if that makes sense.
Mm,
So he would, and it was so emotionally abusive that I was on edge all the time. So I would say one of the telltale
mm,
signs of being in a toxic relationship is your nervous system is never relaxed. You never have peace.
mm,
You're always on edge. It feels like you're either really, really high or you're really, really
mm,
low. There's no in
mm,
between. And healthy relationships, a lot of people feel like healthy relationships are quote unquote boring because there's so much peace and there's like a baseline at all times. But no, that's where you want to be. But when you get used to those extreme patterns, you'll start to feel like, oh, that's boring, or it'll just be unfamiliar. So, one of the telltale signs is just an unrelaxed nervous system at all times. The second
mm.
telltale sign is the people around you who really love you telling you, you need to get out of this. You need
Yes.
this. And I know oftentimes we feel like, oh, I don't want to bring my people into it, but I'm talking about that one friend. Everyone has that one friend that if they do something dumb, they're afraid to tell that friend because they
Mhm,
know that friend is going to be
mhm,
like, what are you doing? What's going on? Why are you doing that? So all of my friends were telling me, you need to get out of this. This is unhealthy. You're not yourself. It just wasn't.
mhm,
Third
mhm,
telltale sign, when you lose yourself in a relationship, when you no longer
mm,
recognize who you are, that's a telltale sign. I did a blog after that relationship that said it was called I found love, but I lost myself.
mm,
Because I was back then, because sometimes we'll go through these relationships and on the back end, because retrospect is the best view, we'll think, oh, I wasn't in love
mhm,
with that person because that's love doesn't look like that. No, you were in love at the time. You just,
mhm,
even if it was an unhealthy love, you were still in love, right? So I was in
right.
love with this person. I was highly attached to this person, but I lost myself. And the reason I lost myself was because of the emotional and mental abuse. I had to become someone else to operate in that relationship. I had to walk on eggshells.
Mm,
I had to cut off friends. I had to tell friends, no, I can't go to your outing because he's in a bad mood today. I can't do XYZ because he's in a bad mood today. So my life, it was times I would go to work and I would have to leave work early because he has me crying. So I used to be this fun loving person that everyone wanted to be around. I
mm,
love talking, love going out, love being friends with, I had male friends, like all of this stuff, to this person who was super, super defensive because I constantly had to be on the defense with him. So I was even on the
mhm,
defense with my friends at all times. I became a shell. Like I didn't
mm,
really want to hang out with my friends anymore because I didn't want them to ask me what was wrong and because they can see through me, right? And then I
mhm.
gained a lot of weight because I was just really trying to eat my way through because I'm
The
emotional.
pain. Mhm,
Yeah, so it just was not good. So if you find yourself losing yourself and you literally sit sometimes, you're like, what do I enjoy? What am
mm,
I doing? Do I have goals at the moment? what makes me happy? When was the last time I smiled and genuinely enjoyed myself? So those were questions where I'm just like, okay, this is insane. And then I would
Yeah.
just say the fourth thing is we often know. We know. We just know. And just listening to your gut and your instinct and knowing like, I know this isn't healthy. Like I know deep down inside when you sit and you talk to yourself. So me, I am a Christian and I do, my prayer all the time. And when I would sit and talk to God, every message was God telling me leave. It was so crazy. Like
Mm,
anytime I prayed about the relationship, I would turn on the radio and the songs would be get out of there,
get out.
leave,
Uh-huh.
don't stay. Cause I was praying saying, hey, God, can you change him and fix my relationship? And God was like, I can't fix what I didn't put together. So you need to leave.
Mm,
So it was just like that
mm.
constant thing. So I think oftentimes we know. And when you are searching for an excuse to stay in a relationship, that is the reason to get out of it.
When you're
So,
searching for an excuse. Ooh,
so
I've
those,
heard women talk about that even very recently. So that's really helpful. And so did you so you got out. Thank God. Let's say
okay. Yeah.
you
Oh,
got
yeah.
out of
I
that.
forgot to mention how I got
That's
out.
okay.
so,
But how did
so,
you find the strength to leave what sounded like a really abusive relationship?
so what's funny is, I was only with him for a year, like a year and some change, which I feel like is pretty quick for like, because I know some of those toxic relationships can hold you tight for longer, but I
Hmm.
still feel like that was way too long. But um, he had ended up moving it. I always say this, he tricked me into moving in literally one day. He came with all his stuff and just never left. It was insane. So
Mm,
he moved in with me and I think like 6 months into it, after just all the emotional abuse, I became numb. I just stopped trying.
mm,
I just
mhm.
couldn't anymore. And so at that point, I was just like, I'm too weak to leave, but I don't have the energy to stay. So I'm going to sit here and focus on myself so I can build up the strength within myself to walk away. Because around that time, I felt like he was cheating, which I later found
Mhm.
out after the relationship. But it was like, I'm not even going to search to see if you're cheating because I don't even have the strength to leave. So I'm just going to leave that alone and focus on myself. So I started to focus on me and rebuilding my strength because I
Yeah.
knew I was so broken, right? So
Mhm.
what I noticed was like when I started to go inward, he started to change a little bit. Like he started to be better. He started to, because I feel like, because I still have grace for people. And just in retrospect, I believe he felt like I need to break her down in order to get her to stay with me because that's like a control thing, maybe. I don't know. But once he had already broken me down, then I think he started to trust it because it's like, okay, yeah, I have control now, so let me act better. But by that time, I'm checked out. So
Mhm.
I really just started to focus in. I started to get real with myself on the mistakes that I made and just really dive deep, pray more,
Mhm.
keep going to church. I just stopped worried about him, like being worried about him in the
Yeah.
relationship. And I just really cut that off and just started to focus in. And so, yeah, I just built the strength within me. So I would say anyone who is in an unhealthy relationship, I think the advice too often is like, oh, just leave, just leave, just leave. It's not that easy. It's not
No.
easy. So please give yourself grace if you are in an unhealthy relationship and don't think, because even in like abusive relationships, they say on average what it takes like 8 times before the person leaves. So
Mhm.
give people grace and give yourself grace. And if you feel like you're not strong enough to walk away right now, focus on building that strength to walk away. Even if you have to stay in it, continue to operate or whatever, but just build your strength up so that once you say, okay, I'm going this time, you're really going to be out of there. So
Right.
like 6 months in, I just checked out. And then it took me 6 months to build up the courage to walk away. Like literally one day,
Mm.
because we had this pattern because I said we argued all the time. And so I would say leave and he would leave for a few days and then he would do the whole comeback with flowers and apologizing.
Yeah.
Like
The
that thing,
cycle of abuse.
the
There's a
cycle, right?
cycle of abuse. Mhm.
So this
Mhm.
one time I think I don't know, I was praying and then I think I was like, no, seriously, I need you to go now. So I
Mhm.
called him and I was just like, hey, I can't do this anymore. I need you to get your stuff. Usually I would be here when this thing happened. I was in, because I live in an apartment complex. I was in the complex, but I actually parked my car somewhere else so that I knew that he was going that time. And I never let him come back.
Oh,
So it was just,
wow.
yeah, building that strength to just say, enough is enough. I deserve more. And
Hmm.
coming out, it was hard. It,
Yeah.
it was hard. Like I cried and prayed every single day for like 30 days straight on my knees for like 2 hours, just rebuilding my. I
Hmm.
just felt so lost and just out of it. But it happens. And again,
Right.
I just feel like people don't beat yourself up. Just don't.
Right.
Just keep betting on
But
yourself.
yeah. But what I love about what you said is letting it out, because I think so many of us hold it in, that pain and that trauma. And so what you just said about you got on your knees and you cried and you prayed for 30 days, I think I was talking to somebody yesterday about the importance of feeling the pain and really working through it, because you have to feel it before you can heal from it. You have to really feel it, and then talking about it really helps, like feeling it and then revealing it openly, and then you can really start to heal. I think that's really helpful. So thank you for sharing your story. I think there's a lot of people on this call that can probably relate. I can relate on so many levels. So I appreciate you sharing that. I want to ask about something you talk about is attachment and attachment
Mhm.
styles. And
Mhm.
there's different types of attachment styles. And so, can you share, how attachment styles can play a role in how people approach relationships,
Yeah.
please?
For sure. Attachment styles have changed my life and just understanding them. So I love talking about them. So sure. So typically there's three different types of attachment styles. We have anxious attachment, secure attachment, and avoidant. So the goal is to be secure. So a secure person is a type of person who they can go into a relationship and they can gain closeness easily, but they can also detach easily if necessary, right? So these are people who were normally raised with parents who gave them all of their emotional needs, who were able to voice their needs and opinions, and they were met with approval and assurance, et cetera, et cetera. But then you get someone who has an anxious attachment, and I have a PhD in anxious attachment style because that is what I came from. So, an anxious attachment style is someone who dealt with either abandonment or they had an inconsistent parent where the parent may have been too busy, may have been emotionally unavailable. So, sometimes they treated them really well and gave them attention, but oftentimes they didn't. They will retreat. So, that child was confused, so they didn't know what to do. So these people who are anxiously attached, they often attach really quickly to relationships. They have very high levels of anxiety when people just when gaining closeness, because they feel like I have to hold on to this thing so tight. But what often happens is when you hold on so tight, you end up pushing people away. So they end up getting the opposite result than what they're looking for, basically. So I was anxiously attached, and just going through relationships, I would quickly attach to people without getting to know them. I would just say, cling to this idea that,
Mm,
like, oh, please don't leave me. Even if the person was bad or good, it's just like, no, please don't leave me. And
mm-hmm,
when there was separation, I would go into these extreme levels of like anxiety and just feeling worried and not being able to sleep. Like my heart would beat really fast. It was really bad. So if you've ever dealt with
mm-hmm,
that, you probably have an anxious attachment style, but don't worry because you can definitely overcome that and become secure. So yeah, and the
mm-hmm,
last one is avoidant attachment. So avoidant attachment is people who were probably raised with parents who are very critical of them. So anytime they spoke up about their feelings, their parent would tell them, shut up, don't cry, don't tell me what, like, you know what I mean? So it was just often met with rejection. So avoidant attachment styles typically avoid closeness. So when people try to get too close to them, they actually push people away. So they really don't have deep, meaningful relationships with anyone because they're afraid to kind of open up because they feel like if they open up too much that their feelings are going to be rejected. So these are people who
mm-hmm,
often and what's crazy is they say on average, most avoidants date anxious because and it's
Mm,
crazy and it's like a match. It's just not a match at all. Like
right,
it's
not
the
good.
work ethic is so toxic, but usually securely attached people are in relationships because they're securely attached. But yeah, the avoidance, they just don't want, it's not that they don't want closeness, they don't know how to gain it because they have to.
Mm,
So the goal for the avoidant and the anxious is to become secure, and you can do that by basically you really have to go deep and heal, like literally go
mm-hmm,
back to where it started. Because I know for me, it started with me like when my father like walked out, and that's when I was 4. I had to go back to that moment and talk to that little girl, tell that little girl, write a letter to that little girl, hey, you were enough, hey, it's okay, hey, you're okay.
mm-hmm,
So that I began there, and I just picked up the pieces throughout. So I started in the earliest moment, and then I got bullied growing up. So I took it there. Then in
mm,
teenage years, feeling like, oh my God, I'm rejected all the time. So just kind of go back there and figure out where it started and start to heal those.
mm-hmm,
And then build
mm-hmm,
a level of awareness where you kind of see, okay, I see a pattern over here. I do this. Let me act opposite of it. How can I avoid that? So
mm-hmm.
yeah.
So to that point, right now what you're talking about are some strategies or tools that you used to
Mhm.
get past that anxiety, that anxious
Mhm.
attachment style. So I know you have clients and you have people that you coach through these things. What are some, I heard you say writing a letter, giving yourself grace, but are there some concrete strategies, 2, 3 things that you say with your clients that may present themselves as an anxious type of relationship style? What are some concrete ways that person that exhibits that anxious type style, what can they do or how do you coach them? What are the strategies that you use to help your clients with
So
the
for
anxious space
mhm.
specifically?
So for anxious, number one thing I would always tell people from jump would always be stop criticizing yourself for being anxiously attached.
Okay.
Because when you are anxiously attached, you feel like something is wrong with you. You feel like you're the problem. You feel like I'm not enough and I will. It's like all of these negative thoughts coming through your brain, right? So once you learn to go from criticism to acceptance, you release yourself
Mm,
from a lot of that grief, right? So the first thing I would tell someone is like, hey, you're anxiously attached. You did not choose that. You did not create that.
mhm,
It is okay to be anxiously attached. You're still loved, you're still capable, and you're still amazing.
mhm,
So don't feel like
mhm,
that disqualifies you from anything because it doesn't. So if you're anxiously attached and you're listening to this, please forgive yourself for all of the negative thoughts and all of the ways that you've spoken to yourself and told yourself all the ways that you don't qualify for a great relationship, how you never do XYZ. No, that's not true.
mhm.
Still amazing and you're still capable. So that would be number one, release yourself from that grief. Number two
Yes.
would be to learn how to break patterns by identifying them. So I would tell them to go sit down and think about the past 3 relationships. Think about how they started, when that anxiety started to increase, how you handled times of conflict, and identify the unhealthy patterns that you have noticed or like how that worked, even if that comes down to who you chose to attach yourself to, right? Because oftentimes we choose these people out of patterns from just our childhood. For example, I told you that my mom was a bit emotionally unavailable just because she just didn't
Mhm,
have the time. And also, she didn't have that emotional availability growing up. So I caught myself dating a lot of emotionally unavailable men. And I'm like, what are you doing? So
mhm.
notice that patterning and stuff, you have to really
Yeah.
sit down and notice it and identify those patterns because you can't change what you don't know is broken. So you have to identify
Right.
the pattern first, right? So once you sit down and you identify that pattern, keep that list in your face, right? And then you have to kind of reverse engineer and figure out like, how can I do XYZ, right? Like, how can I eliminate this pattern? How can I stop
Mm.
doing this? How can I act opposite of this? And most of the time it's going to require discipline. People think, oh, just because
Yes,
I'm aware of something, that is awareness is the same thing as applying an application. It's not. You can be aware that you're gaining weight and you're getting big, but until you apply a diet and apply a workout
that's
plan, it's
right.
not you. You know what I mean? It's not going to
Stop
be
eating and work out,
exactly so.
or
And that's
eat less.
right. And that takes discipline. And then the last
Mm,
thing, one of the biggest moments that kind of really helped me with my attachment style, and I love telling other people, is we cannot move in relationships like everyone else moves. So, for example,
mhm,
if say I meet someone today and I'm getting to know them, I can't see you every day. I can't do that. I need to build trust with you first, because if I see you every day, I'm going to become attached to you. And I just don't want to do that if I don't know you well enough. So I need to take my time and pace myself in a way where I'm getting to know you with distance. And that's okay. And even when it comes to communication, a lot of us, because we want to cling so hard, we require this, oh, I need to talk to you every day, all day. I need you to tell me good
mhm,
morning, good afternoon. What are you doing all throughout the day? No, calm down, pace yourself. So just
mhm.
understanding that because you have a tendency to get attached quickly, control
Yes,
that by pacing yourself and going a little bit slower than you normally would, which requires discipline. But you want to build that trust with that person first to really get to know if they are a good fit. Because oftentimes when you are anxiously attached, anyone who comes into your life and you look at them and they look good on paper, you're like, instantly, I want them. So instantly you
mhm,
started throwing everything at it. No, take a step back,
mhm,
pace yourself, look over it. It's kind of like home buying.
mhm.
You're not going to buy the first house that you go into. Like, you
Right,
tour it, see what's going on,
right,
see if you like
right.
the neighborhood, see if the neighbors are cool,
That's
and
right.
then
Go
attack.
back a couple times. Go back a couple
Exactly.
times before you write a contract.
Exactly.
Mhm,
So just understand that you can't date like
mhm.
other people might date, because it's just going to be different for you, because that
That's
separation
great.
is going to cause an anxious reaction, and you can
Yes.
eliminate that anxious reaction by eliminating the closeness that you form with someone who is not right for you.
That's right, and pacing yourself. So that's such great advice for that anxious attachment
Yes,
style. The multiple strategies
yes.
around,
Yes.
you know, which you already gave. So I'd love to have you do the same thing for that avoidant
Hmm.
person. So if someone has an avoidant personality or uh, style in
Hmm.
terms of relationships, what are some tips that you would recommend, similar to what you just did for anxious? What
Hmm.
are some tips that you would suggest for avoidance, the avoidant person?
So for the avoidant person, the number one thing I would tell them, they don't necessarily feel as inadequate, but they feel like relationships aren't as important and closeness isn't necessary. And I would tell them that with the right person, a close, intimate relationship can change your life in ways that you have never experienced. So that is available and it's real. So get out of the mindset of thinking you don't need anyone. You do need people, and people need you. So be okay with, or be courageous enough to believe that
Mm,
are people out there who want to love you genuinely, and they will accept every emotion you bring. And that doesn't mean that you're inadequate in any way, that, you know, you're no longer independent, because a lot of them are gripping onto that independence. You're still independent, even if you allow yourself to be loved and allow you to love your other people as well. So just accept that closeness is good and closeness is not a bad thing. Number two, when people start to get close to you, your default is to pull away. I need you to take a minute, stop, breathe,
mhm.
evaluate. Don't instantly go to your default. And I know that's hard, because immediately it's like closeness. Okay, I've been talking to this person all the time. They're getting too close. Nope, shut down. Nope, I'm not doing this. Allow yourself to sit in that uncomfortable emotion of closeness, even if it's small things, right? Even if you just met somebody and you're used to texting them and they call you, and now you're like, why are they calling me? This is too close. I don't want to answer. Like, allow yourself to pick up that phone call and just have a conversation. Stop feeling like you have to block out every form of closeness and intimacy, because you don't.
That's so funny. Mm,
You don't, okay? Just allow yourself to feel. That's really it. Allow yourself to feel. And you don't have to do it in a romantic space all the time. That's hard, right? So start with friendships. Start with coworkers.
mhm.
Usually your coworkers invite you out. You're like, "Oh no, I got to do." No, just say yes to the coworker outing. So the next time someone asks you somewhere and you're like, "No, I'm alone, or I don't need to go," say yes. Just challenge yourself just so you can get
To say
into that
yes.
intimacy, right?
Mhm,
And then lastly, I would
mhm,
tell them the same advice that I would tell the anxious person. Identify those patterns. What are those patterns? Right? What are those patterns? Because you need to know, where am I going wrong here? How do I get to the opposite end of this spectrum, right? How do I get over this?
mhm.
So where did this start? Okay, so growing up, when was the first time I felt like my feelings were rejected or denied or invalidated? Okay, it started here. Okay, then again in middle school when someone bullied me, or then again in college when that professor told me that I was
Mm,
wrong, this XYZ, right? So identify those patterns and try to start to heal yourself from that, because oftentimes we'll develop this narrative in our mind from our experiences, but not every thought that goes through your mind is the truth. So you have to learn
mhm.
how to understand the thoughts that are the truth and the thoughts that are lies that have been developed by our past experiences. So yeah,
Mm, that's fantastic. A question that came into the chat is it possible to have multiple attachment styles or change your style depending on the relationship?
absolutely. Absolutely. So there is so those are the three main ones, but over the years they have one, I can't think of the name right now, but there is one where it's like it's an avoidant and anxious mixed up in one, because maybe
Mm,
you had that parent or those set of parents that gave you both of those things. They rejected you, but they also were inconsistent. So yeah, so you can go into different relationships and just, you can be really anxious sometimes depending on this person, but then also you can find yourself avoiding safety. Like the people
mm,
who put a wall up are the safe people, the people who do give you what you need, but
mhm.
immediately you're like, I don't want closeness with them. But that person who exhibits those unavailable traits that you saw in childhood and your parents, that's who you want to attach to. It's because of
Right.
that pattern you developed, because that's how you were raised. We often don't live out our relationships romantically how we want to, and the goals, we often live them out through how we were loved as children. So if we were loved
Right.
improperly as children, we often form unhealthy, improper loving patterns as adults. So
That's
really
right.
pay attention and investigate, how was I loved as a child? How did my parents give me the love that I needed? Was it perceived as I needed? Was I have an attention deficit? Did they give me the attention that did they give me the
Mhm.
validation? If the answer to those questions are no, then compare it to how you find yourself showing up in your current romantic relationships. And if those things coincide, you're in a pattern, you need to break it.
I love it. Love. Thank you. That's a great answer. Thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit about communication. And if you're starting, and it could be that you're in a relationship right now that you're not seeing eye to eye. It could be that you have a situation with a loved one, a child, a grown child, adult living with you, and you're not on the same page. But what are some strategies to improve communication? It could also be if you're starting a new relationship and you need to set boundaries. What are some effective communication styles or recommendations or ideas on setting boundaries and clearly articulating our needs or our perspectives, whether it's related to a child or purely the relationship?
So I would say what I've noticed lately, because of course, people come to me for advice, friends, family, everything. And this is just in parenting. I don't have kids, But I don't know why my friends who have kids ask me for advice. I'm just like, I don't. But what I have noticed is we often govern ourselves to our biases. And
Mm,
because of that, we hear with judgment instead of hearing with compassion. So
mm,
I believe one of the best ways to have better communication with anyone is to check your biases at the door. So what I mean is, say if you are particular to Chick-fil-A. You love Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is the best chicken you ever tasted in your life. So anyone who comes to you and says, hey, you should try this Popeyes because this Popeyes is delicious, because you're biased to Chick-fil-A, you're like, no, I don't want to try the Popeyes. That's stupid. I don't want to do that because this is my calm
mm-hmm,
down. Try the Popeyes. Is it going to kill you
mm-hmm,
to try the Popeyes? Right? Even if you don't agree with it, just listen. Still,
mm-hmm,
the best communicators are active listeners. They're the best.
mm,
They listen more and talk less. So I think once you learn to check your biases and understand that I'm biased towards this subject, so let me calm down and not listen to respond, but rather listen to understand what they're trying to say and then form my opinion or form my response. And sometimes you may not have a response. Sometimes your response is like, you know what, let me think about that and I'll get back to you. That can increase
mm,
communication just right off the bat, right? So I would
right.
definitely say just become a better listener and check your biases at the door because we all have them. We all are biased towards
Absolutely.
something, right? So that they often say, and this holds true, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. I used to be
Mm,
I used to be a very direct friend with no buffer. And God placed people in my life who were very sensitive. And so I'm the blunt friend, right? So often we're just like, oh, people are too sensitive. This isn't how I meant for it to come off, blah, 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 blah. But sometimes framing it the proper way is going to get your message over a way better. It's going to help them understand it. Because if you say
mm,
something, but that other person doesn't comprehend it, that's not communication. You have to say it in
absolutely.
a way that they comprehend it. And guess what? You might have to repeat yourself.
Mm-hmm,
I know we hate repeating ourselves. You have to repeat yourself.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes you have to
mm-hmm.
repeat yourself. Like my friends, oftentimes I give them advice. I can give them advice in 2018 that they won't apply until 2024. But I'm okay
That's
with that
true.
because I'm
That's
humble
right.
and patient enough to love this
Mm-hmm.
person through them not listening to me because it's not about me at the end of the day. It's about them getting what they need, right?
That's
So
right.
yeah. So I would definitely say
You can get, you're giving guidance and perspective that sometimes people, it's like planting the seeds, planting the seeds, planting the seeds,
exactly.
whether it's your friend or your child, you plant the seed, walk away, you water it a little bit, walk away. At some point, it's growing, it starts to grow. And it may not be, like you just said, it might be 5 years later, and you see this beautiful blossom and this beautiful plant or flower, but it's taken time to cultivate. And that's true. Like what I hear you saying is, that's true with relationships or your children, which is a relationship, right? So you're building this relationship by listening more and listening to understand and asking questions. But really, that word listen is so powerful. I want to just pause there. Someone once told me, and it's true, listen and silent have the same letters. And so
Mm,
if you really think about that, it's like the power of being silent and really listening is so powerful, especially as parents, especially as parents, listening to our children. What are they really saying? And how can we support them better by listening to their hearts, not just the words? So thank you for that. And I see Jules has her hand up. Good morning. Do you want to come off mute? Good morning.
Good morning. This has been a really interesting conversation. And as I was listening to what Ashleigh was sharing, I couldn't help but think a lot of it really is about focusing on our cycle of socialization. I mean, it's listening, but it's also understanding in every single aspect. How was I socialized and what did all of my experiences have on me? what is it? It's not like when we talk about taking the deep dive and going inward, it's like, okay, now that I have lived this long and I have done so many things, do I understand how I got here? But now that I understand how I got here, do I really understand who I am and how I'm going to operate? And I always enjoy having folks and my friends do the love languages, because you have the 5 love languages that you can use in business. The love languages I use with my children, but also having a deeper understanding of what makes me tick, like you, the person, tick. Because if you know your personality, when I was cracking up when my friends are now using this, but I'm like, if you know your personality, I can meet the nicest, most wonderful, generous person. But if gifts are not my love language and acts of service are not my love language, and that's what it is, and I know I'm like, I'm really not going to do the gardening with you. I know that would mean a lot to you, but I know that that's not how I'm going to tick. Then why not just say, like, we are going to be friends, because I understand with my own personality and what I need and what I'm willing to do, that this is not going to work long term. So why continue to engage because you come with everything else, but not long term what I know that I need? And I think it took a long time to be able to say, I am very well aware now of what it is and what compatibility and what I'm willing to do. Why give someone the stressor of showering you with gifts and doing all of these things that are great, but you know long term is not going to make you do something that you're not going to want to do. And it just takes a long time to be able to say, this is really who I am, and I have to, and with the strengths and the weaknesses, I have to be very clear
Mm-hmm.
of who I'm most compatible with.
Absolutely. I love that. And Ashley, did you want to comment on that as well?
Uh, just agreeing with compatibility for
Hmm.
sure. We often, this week I'm gonna talk about starving our needs in my podcast, but I think a lot of times we starve our needs because we get that person that's almost it, but that almost is not good enough. Because if it's like a person who isn't meeting the needs that are high on your list and high on your love language, then they could be amazing over here, but if those needs are going unmet, then it's not going to work. So definitely agree.
Absolutely. So great. Thank you for sharing that. And I see the second person that came on. I don't know if you want your name acknowledged. I'll say the initials EH. If you want to come off of mute, please feel free. Or if not, let's see. Then wait, let's
Oh
see.
wait,
Are you?
I'm here. I'm here. I'm sorry.
Oh, great. Good.
Uh,
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for this conversation. I mean, it's resonating with me. Just to share a little bit, I this week finally signed my marital settlement agreement after being
Mm,
separated for 3 years and coming to the realization of how toxic my relationship was.
mm,
Everything that you talked about, I can really relate to. But what, and trying to heal myself and doing a lot of reading and listening to podcasts, I want to introduce the thought into this conversation about narcissism. And everyone who's toxic is not a narcissist, but a lot of people have narcissistic tendencies. And in learning more about that, it has really changed my life because I definitely internalized a lot of what was happening to me. So, my boyfriend was great. The love bombing, everything was wonderful. And so as things started to change, I kept trying to get back to that person who really didn't exist, but I didn't know it. So 18 years later, I'm still here wondering what the heck is wrong with me? Why am I staying in this situation? But it's because I felt like he's there. I just need to get back to that. Plus, you add kids to the scenario, you add thinking about money. It's not, like you said, so easy to leave, even when you know you're not happy and it's not the best thing. I feel like over the years, my body was actually rejecting him. Like I would literally have physical ailments, and I really thought I was going crazy. And so I just want to introduce that. And there's a book, and I don't know if it's okay to say this, but this book has really opened my eyes. It's called It's Not You. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Ashleigh, by Dr. Ramani. It really, really explains all of the aspects and then how you can kind of heal from that. So I've just found it very helpful, and I pray for anyone. I wish I had this information so much earlier. I pray for anyone going through it, but I understand what you're dealing with, and it'll make it a little easier to make changes. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm putting the book in the chat since it's a recommendation from you. And congratulations on taking this step forward. That's powerful. That's amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I see a young man who is on video. If you'd like to come off of mute, please feel free. Next. Good
Hey, Kelly,
morning.
how y'all doing? Good morning, everybody.
Good
Hey,
morning.
Travis.
Thank you, SonRise, for having this safe space to speak. A lot of times I came on just to, support and be there. I came in right at the conversation of the abusive relationship and, women being able to grow to leave and the kids and all that. Just speaking from personal experience, my parents was in abusive relationships. And when I was like 4 or 5, it's crazy. Look, the police just pulled up, not for me behind me, but I apologize for the noise. But the police actually came to our house and took us away because they were fighting so abusively, right?
So sorry.
And it when you're staying in the relationship for the kids, no judgment, of course, just motivation. Don't stay for the kids. It actually hurts, right? I still remember that memory, and I'm grown, right? Like that is the memory that's embedded of them fighting and the police coming in. So if you think you're doing it for the kids, don't take them on an adventure. Go stay house to house, hotel to hotel, tent to tent, because that's fun, right? Kids don't know they're in trouble. They don't know they're poor in a sense, right? They just know they're with mom and we're going to do something. So if I can give that piece from my personal experience, leave him, leave her, right? And it's better off. Like you'll be okay. So I just wanted to give that, and thank you guys for letting me share. I don't really get to talk about that. As men, you can't talk about that outside, right? So it's amazing to have somewhere to come where you won't be judged to talk about things that hurt you, are still hurting you to today, and work through them. So I appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And Ashleigh, did you want to say something?
No, just agreeing for sure. Because it's recognize that hurt over the good times, and that's unfortunate, right? Because those negative experiences are ingrained in your brain often. So I definitely agree. Don't stay for that. And I unfortunately think that that's one excuse people use to stay. So I think you can identify that as an excuse that you may be using to stay and say, let me eliminate that excuse and just focus on rebuilding myself up so that I can have the strength to leave for my kids. So.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to also say thank you for sharing. And that's exactly why we're here, is to provide a space for people to feel comfortable sharing, whether they're on camera, off camera. Never say their name, put a note in the chat, whatever it is. It's the place to be able to openly share. And I just think I know so many people who have stayed because of the kids and who think that they're doing better by trying to hold it together and have both parents in the home and all the things. But really, as you said, it's harmful. And what you shared earlier, Ashley, I thought was really powerful around what you see. It's generational. And Jules mentioned this too. How you are born, how you're raised in the home. If you're modeling a loving relationship, you have more likelihood of being in a loving relationship. If you're modeling, keeping calendars and running, being Uber drivers, parent Uber drivers, then you have more likelihood of being in that type of relationship versus a connected, loving relationship. So I just wanted to add that and say also, lastly, we've created a safe space additionally for men to come together on the third Thursday of the month. So more information on that to come. We had our first one this week, but that will be coming and continuing monthly purely for men. So we know that there are other important spaces and conversations that men need to have beyond, what we're doing here. So that is coming as well. And it's the third Thursday of the month with Dr. Rick Wallace. So more to come on those. But thank you for sharing, Travis. And then Dee, I see your hand is up if you'd like to share. And there's a survey if you are on your computer, please click on the survey and fill it out. We appreciate getting feedback. And if there's things you want to hear about or topics you'd like to have, that's really helpful as well. So Dee, if you're on your, there you
Good
go.
morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So I wanted to piggyback on what one of the previous callers mentioned about communication. I do think communication is about expressing your wants and needs, but it is all about creating and maintaining boundaries and managing expectations in the relationship. I think as we get older, we recognize what our non-negotiables are in a relationship. And if your partner knows that, I think the example with camping or something like that, if they know that you're not someone that likes to go camping, to continue to suggest that your spouse or partner go camping, I mean, that's always going to be an argument. And that actually doesn't do anything for your relationship to try to convince someone to do something that they've already expressed that they don't want to do. So I think communication definitely goes both ways of expressing your needs, but also being able to accept when your partner is unable to meet that need. So I just wanted to, and it's okay. I mean, as you mentioned before, Ashleigh, that's when you decide that relationship is no longer good for you, and your partner's not able to meet your needs. But communication is definitely managing that expectation and accepting it when your partner doesn't meet it. Thank you.
That's great. I think that word acceptance and being okay to be different. And I want to also make sure that we, so thank you. And Ashleigh, I see you get ready to say something. I also want you to address one thing that you talk about a lot, which is if you've been in a relationship that's been traumatic or negative or, just not the right relationship, how do you find hope? Because you talked about that avoidant style. How do you find hope again?
I did just want to touch on
address that comment, please.
Just managing expectations. That is huge. Because I think the reason there are multiple people on earth and multiple people in your community is because you can't get all your needs met from one person, and that's okay. I love when they talk about the 80-20 rule, because there will be times where that person, that could be a parent, your best friend, your family, so I think it's important to understand that your spouse or the person you're with may not be able to be everything, but they shouldn't be everything, so it's okay to spread that out. So I think that's really important, because I think oftentimes we put too much pressure on people to fulfill everything. And sometimes it's like, no, that's why you have multiple relationships. So give that person some grace and give that person some relief, So I thank you for saying that. That's a great, great point. And you're saying finding hope, maintaining
yes.
hope. Okay. It's because
yes.
it's hard. So we live in a culture right now that is just so cynical, and often because entertainment negativity sells, drama sells. So we glorify toxicity often. So what we see going on, it feels like everybody's doing it, but it's really not. It's just push because that's what the people want to see, the drama. That's what it is. So I think one of the main things to do to maintain hope is watch the messaging that you're receiving. What's going into your eye gates and your ear gates? If everything you listen to or hear is about this person's abusive relationship, that person's cheating on this person is this, of course you're going to lose hope, because all you're seeing is the negativity. So I challenge you to start listening to those hopeful messages. Listen to podcasts or watch TV shows where people who are in healthy relationships, who have been married for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, how they overcame, and just have your own, it's cliche to have your affirmations, but have your affirmations. Tell yourself, I'm still going to do this. I'm going to be in a happy, healthy relationship. I'm going against the grain. I'm not going to allow culture to be my example and to be, the guide that leads me. No, I'm going to maintain this hope because I know this is what I really want, and I'm not going to stop until I get it. So definitely check your messaging. Number 2, don't be afraid to sit in the discomfort of waiting for what you really want. I think people feel like waiting is a punishment, but it's not. It's not. It's not failure either. It's preparation. So shift that perspective. Waiting is not failure. Waiting is preparation. My motto, I say it all the time, being single is a beautiful choice rather than a miserable circumstance, because this world will make you feel like being single is a circumstance. It is something you fell into. When oftentimes, if you find yourself single, it's because you chose to walk away from something negative. You chose to wait on something that you really desire in your heart. You chose to sit in the discomfort until you get your needs met. So feel empowered today. Stop making yourself feel like, oh, this is something I fell into. No, this is something you chose because you want what's best and not what's convenient, right? So just be empowered today over that and maintain your hope and continue to shift your perspective. And then 3, I would say, enjoy your life. Like, I am constantly enjoying my life. Like, I have a very healthy social life. It might be too healthy. So I would say maintaining hope is when you still have that dream. For me, I want marriage. I want kids. I'm single, but I still maintain that hope within my heart because that's what keeps me going. But I'm not going to stop my life. I'm still going to travel. I'm still going to work on my dreams. I'm still going to work on buying a house and doing all the things that I want to do until my person comes, right? I think we get in that moment where we're like, we've been waiting for so long and we feel like it's not going to happen, and we just start to give up on all the other hopes and dreams. And it's like, no, continue that, maintain that hope, keep fighting for something. So your hope is your anchor. So keep it close to you, because if you don't keep it close to you and you lose it, your life is not going to be fulfilled. You're not going to be happy. Don't give up on what you really want until you get it.
Love that. Hope is so important, and belief is so important, whether it's about relationships or our children. Hope and belief that our children will be well no matter what, because God's got them. We talk about that a lot here. So thank you, Ashleigh, for being here this morning. You were incredible, wonderful tips and strategies for creating the relationships we all want. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I am, Dr. Vicki Johnson is on this morning, so she is going to close us out with a prayer for our Sunday and our week.
Ashleigh, Kelly, you keep getting me in the car. This was awesome. I think at some point in my life, I've been anxious. I've been avoidant.
Yeah.
I'm a perfect combination of all those things. And it feels good to be able to sit on the other side and hold space for other people, to be a beacon of hope. And that's what you've been for us today. So thank you. Thank you so much. God, we thank you for this day that you have given us to discover and rediscover more about ourselves. Thank you for the opportunity for more awareness, and for shining a light on our blind spots, for giving us hope, because your word says hope deferred makes the heart sick. So we thank you that our hope is intact. Our hope is being fortified so that our hearts can heal and we can become
the people, the person that we would want to be in relationship with. So thank you for the wisdom. Thank you for Ashleigh and the well of wisdom that she is in the earth. We thank you for Kelly and the vision of the SonRise Project. We thank you for the team that consistently creates this community for people to find a safe space so that we can become the best version of ourselves. Now, as we go into this day and as we go into the rest of this week, God, I thank you for helping us to bear witness to hope all around us in subtle ways and obvious ways, reminding us that we are loved, that we are worthy of love, that we deserve love, starting with the love that we give ourselves. We thank you that we're able to give ourselves grace. Thank you for the reminder that your grace is sufficient. And now, God, as we go out into the world, keep us safe, protect us from harm and danger seen and unseen, and keep us until we're able to come together again. Bless our families, our children. Bless us who are parents. Give us wisdom. Continue to order our steps, and we will give your name glory. We will point people back to you because this is your doing, and it is marvelous to us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Have a powerful day, everyone. This was just incredible. Ashleigh, thank you again.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vicky. And I know I grabbed you in the car again, but that's why you are so amazing. So thank you for that incredible prayer. Thank you, Ashleigh, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for being here and having a wonderful day. We'll be closing out April next Sunday with B. Sapp, who will be speaking around autism and autism, given it's Autism Awareness Month. So that will be our last Sunday of April. Have a wonderful day, everyone. And thank you again, Ashleigh, for being here today.
You're welcome.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.